This episode is sponsored by Auto Trader. See a car in a movie that you just watched?
You can find it on Auto Trader. Shop millions of new and used cars on Auto Trader.
Welcome to Ear Biscuits, the podcast, where two lifelong friends talk about life for a long time. I'm Link.
And I'm Rhett. This week at the Round Table of Dim Lighting, we are celebrating and reminiscing 40 years of friendship.
40 years of friendship with each other.
It's our friendiversary.
We're talking about us now. Our friendiversary.
This comes out 2 days before our actual friendiversary, right? So September 4th, 1984, that is that's
day,
when it started.
It was the first day of
I don't want to talk, I mean, I don't want to say what it was.
So it's easy, it was easy to retroactively
we're gonna talk
pinpoint.
About that. Yeah. And people on the internet actually figure this out because we always talk about meeting first grade at Bowie's Creek Elementary School, and people were like, well, I did some research, and the actual first day of school was September 4th in 1984. So thank you for whoever did that originally. That's how we know that.
We can always count on
That's how long we've been friends.
Mythical beasts.
So we're going
and we also did a special little celebration on Good Mythical morning, so you can check that out. It did involve a ceremony and Elvis. And it was a complete surprise to us.
And let's just say, maybe Stevie talked about this on Good Mythical more, I can't remember. It was great to have Elvis. Elvis was not our first choice. Was not our first choice.
We did talk about that.
We had a couple of other.
We talked about that on more.
So anyway, we decided what we want to do is we want to reminisce. We have each put together a list of the most significant / iconic moments in our friendship. This got really squirrely really quickly for me.
Well, we got our wires crossed in terms of the assignment, I will say.
Yeah.
Because this was your idea, which made me very happy that you suggested this idea, that we, come up with special moments over the course of our 40 years of friendship.
And I should have clarified, because I was thinking at the time not to make it a top 10, because that means we have to narrow it down to a top 10. We have to rank things in order of significance or whatever. So I just went from the beginning and started tracking through our friendship chronologically and tried to remember the most significant moments. And it got out of hand really quickly.
Well, all you said was
way more than 10.
The text you sent me was, we can each make lists and compare before, or we can make lists and go through it like we would top 10.
Yeah,
so
I was misleading.
So then I was like, okay, I'll pull that together.
Like we would.
And then we never talked about it again.
What I was hoping would happen.
And so what I did was I tried to narrow it down to like 10 things that I was gonna rank as like, what are the most pivotal moments in our friendship? And then you're like, well, I've got 40.
Well, what I meant by that, I didn't think we were making the decision. I was like, would you want to do it like this? Do you want to do it like this? Like, let's talk about it. And then we just didn't talk about it again.
It's fine. You do it your way, I'll do it mine. Is this the breakup? Is this the end of 40 years of friendship?
I mean, I don't have 40, but I probably have 20. But I may
have 40.
But I may not
mention. Nice
I may not mention all 40, all 20.
And you want to do it in chronological order.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it in order of importance, which now I'm not going to do because I didn't reorder them. Once you told me that you're not doing that.
I didn't want to assign more or less significance to different moments, because once I started thinking about them, that seemed like an impossible task.
I'll do that. I'm up for the task.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be my role. But since you have more than me and you want to go in a certain order, I'm gonna let you do that.
And because there's so many, and if we've talked extensively about any of this stuff before, I just feel like moving along. You know what I'm saying? Like, for instance, number 1, the first day we met, September 4th, 1984, Miss Locklear's class. We did a whole episode about how the story about that and the specifics about that were potentially invented in our own minds, about writing curse words and being held in from recess, which we still remember, we still believe, at least being held in from recess.
But we don't question that being the first day we met.
We know that's the first day we met.
less because we remember it specifically and more because didn't it just have to be? I mean, is there an argument to be made that we actually met at church a week before, a month before? Basically what we're doing is we're undermining. Today we are undermining every one of our most special memories of friendship calling it completely into question.
I've never thought about that. We moved that summer, and then I think we visited Memorial and we visited First Baptist, and I don't know if I would have gone to Sunday school. You didn't always go to church.
Yeah, I did.
Every Sunday?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was just late a lot.
So there's a possibility that we met before that.
All right, so let's cross that one off the list.
Like maybe 2 weeks before, but we didn't talk. I know we didn't have a conversation because I was like the new kid and I didn't talk to anybody until I got to school. I don't think I would have gone to Sunday school. I think I would have like waited or something.
Right, because you were the new kid.
And I think we got to North Carolina right before school started. I don't know. That's my recollection. Maybe like a week or two before school started? I don't know. So yeah, we met for the first time in first grade. Let's not screw that one up.
I am not putting this as the number one moment of our friendship because yes, it's very important the first time we met, but there's more important moments in our friendship.
Okay, like the first time I spent the night at your house.
What do you remember about this?
I don't remember at all.
But you know it must have been important.
This is why I surmise that this is really important. Again, as we've talked about many times, I had a propensity to invite myself over to other kids' homes.
Yeah.
Boys' homes. Not boys' homes like we're foster
like
children.
Orphanage?
Like not orphanages. Like other homes of children, other people's houses.
Your friends, dude.
No.
Friends.
They didn't have to be my friends.
Potential friends.
Anybody at all. And what I will say is that every single kid in that like first grade class, for the most part, over the course of a couple of years, I invited myself over to everybody's house. Most people, I would go over to their house, I would spend the night, and I would say, I've seen all I need to see. I'm not coming back. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we had a small house. You could pretty much see everything you could stand in the middle of the house and see it all.
I've seen what's in the refrigerator. I know what movies they got on VHS, which usually was none because people rented VCRs back then.
Do they have a Nintendo?
There was a select number of people that I was like, I made the decision to re-invite myself over. And yours was one of those houses. There weren't many. There's a handful. So I would say that was a significant sign. I don't remember the first time, but there was a second and third and fourth time. And then there was at some point where I was able to talk you into spending the night at my house, but it was probably like 6th grade because you were scared to not sleep in your own bed.
Well, it is interesting to there's certain things that we know for sure, like that we were very different at that age. This is a very validatable point here, and a good example to then like extrapolate, right? You were unabashedly inviting yourself to people's houses, and I would never do that.
But you would certainly do it now. But I wouldn't do it now. It's like we've had a role reversal.
But we were very different in that way, which I think leads to being different in a lot of different ways. But when we hung out, it still worked. And I think it has to do with that silliness, like laughing together. That's what that's what we've like derived and when we wrote about it in the book of Mythicality. I think that's like friends who laugh together stay together. Kind of that slogan is something that I think it really is the backbone of. We just had the same vibe, the same sense of humor, and we also saw each other a lot because there was the church thing. Like 3 times during the week, we would be in the same space outside of school.
There were other kids who were also part of that.
Right.
In the class and in church that I didn't end up going back to their house.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It's not like from that early age we were seen as like this duo as like best friends constantly and at all times.
But in my first grade, first or second grade, I think it was first grade though, that my mom still has and then became a T-shirt.
Right.
It was like Miss Locklear gave us this thing, and it was like you had to draw your family, your pets, your favorite activities, your best friend or friends, and I put Link and Matt. Link, Neil, Matthew Enzor.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I never spent the night at Matthew's house.
That's a data point.
But I drew you as my best friend in first grade.
Okay, well there you go. Okay, that's proof positive.
Yeah, blonde hair, full blue suit.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a T-shirt.
Okay.
I don't know if you can get it anymore.
There you go. You know what? To break out of the chronology, because you mentioned Miss Locklear, one of the iconic moments in our friendship for me is making the documentary Looking for Miss Locklear, which we filmed in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
It technically didn't come out until 2006. You can still rent it on Amazon now if you want to watch it.
Yeah.
That was an important moment in our friendship because it was the first time. I mean, we made a movie together within the context
only movie we've ever made
of working for, crew, working for a nonprofit. We somehow like altered our job description and like the strategy of what we were doing to include making a film, which was extremely exciting and rewarding and just a really long project. It was like this passion project that we filmed it over one summer, but then over the next couple of years, we would just edit it when we had time. And it was directly tied to the origin story of our friendship.
Yeah.
And it was a big creative risk and a big creative adventure that we found a way to make it happen. And I think it was a super sweet thing that we did, that memorialized our friendship. We felt like this is something we want to share with people. And even now, we're really leaning into that with Wonderhole, so I think that was a really pivotal experience for us because it was documenting an experience and it was making a movie and it was about our friendship in the past. And it was also about, an American Indian tribe seeking federal recognition.
It ended up, I would say that it was a bit emblematic of what we've continued to lean into all these years and are leaning into with Wonderhole, which we'll talk about more later on because I'm going chronologically.
I remember spending the night at your house. Much more than I remember you spending the night at my house.
On the U.S. history mattress?
Yes. Yeah, which was like, it would fold up into the couch, but then you would take it out and just put it on the floor, wouldn't you?
I had a fold up bed underneath my bed? No, I just had a mattress that was underneath my bed.
We would usually sleep in that guest room because that's where the Nintendo was.
Right, but before that, in the early days, my parents would take that U.S. history mattress, which I also had one, and I will say, just preface this, later when I was going through puberty and I was experimenting with not my couch, I'm not J.D. Vance, my bed, that was a different mattress at the time.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And I no longer was sleeping on it. Well, maybe I was. Was I sleeping on that one?
No, I'm saying that
what the hell?
You do not, I can assure you that you've never slept on a mattress that I had sex with.
Are you sure? Because I spent the night at your house when we were 15, 14,
they would
16?
change the mattress by that point. The U.S. history mattress was very, very thin.
Oh, okay.
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 Here's the thing.
I remember your television remote. We're moving on.
I'm just, let me just say that I'm not running for vice president, and I know that J.D. Vance didn't actually have sex with a couch. Somebody made a joke, and it became a thing. But here's the thing. I am not running for vice president, and I did have sex with furniture.
Okay.
So it's the exact opposite. He is running, and he didn't have. I'm openly not running for vice president and openly admit that I did have sex with furniture.
But you don't have to because you're not running for anything. There's no reason
But I'm saying that if I ever do run for something, and God forbid, I really don't want to, I mean, I'm gonna have to embrace that. It's gonna be part of my platform. It's gonna be like, yes, I did have sex with furniture.
Well, you know, that's what makes the best leaders.
People who are honest.
No, people who have sex with furniture. No, people who don't want the office.
Yeah. I don't want it, Link. Don't twist my arm into running for
I've had
office.
sex with furniture. Do not vote for me. I don't want it. Oh, he's perfect.
Yeah.
He's perfect. He's the total package.
Yeah.
There's a small group of fans that are gonna be very happy you finally addressed this.
Oh, which part of it?
When the JD Vance thing first came out, there was a number of fan responses I saw.
Jesse told me that I should say something about it. She, my social media advisor, my wife.
Yeah.
She told me I should engage. I was like, I'm just not doing Twitter right now.
I remember your television remote it was corded.
Yeah, it was a Zenith.
It was a Zenith and it had a cord.
Zenith, the best brand of TV.
Okay. What else you got? Let's not get off on the tangent of who has the best television.
You may
got 40 years of friendship, man.
You may disagree with this, but I think some of the things in my list are going to be things that I were like, if we were making a movie about our lives, this would be an iconic scene. And then some things are going to be like, this is a circumstantial thing that happened that I think has a lot of significance.
Okay.
This is the latter. Pastor Tim, youth pastor Tim showing up at Bowie's Creek First Baptist Church.
Yeah.
And I would say in a lot of ways.
Okay. Well, I know that he was very fervent and excited to teach us as youth to be just as fervent and excited as he was, to like take a risk for the gospel.
Passion about your relationship with Jesus.
So much so that you would share it with people.
And just prioritizing it. Like it being, hey, if this is true, and I'm not saying that this wouldn't have happened anyway, because my personality was like, I was all in. But I think this was, if it had been a different, like less passionate, less good in that sense, youth pastor, I think that I may have been a little bit more lukewarm, right? But I think it connected with both of us in a way that it ended up being a thing that we had in common. It's, there were other girls that we knew that maybe were as passionate or whatever, but like in terms of like guys who were like,
that's true,
unabashedly passionate about Jesus.
Yeah.
We had that in common in a way that we couldn't really connect with other people.
For me, that point would be that mission trip.
We went to Trinidad. But we went to Trinidad, why? Because of Tim.
Right, and we were 14, 15?
That was...
Yeah, right before high school.
Right before high school.
Yeah.
Right. Which, at the same time, without getting into the hairy details of why there was a church split at Bowie's Creek First Baptist Church that year, it squarely had to do with Tim.
Right.
Which led to the beginning.
Because some people thought he should be the pastor.
Right.
And we had this like very strong relationship with him, so we were very invested. It wasn't something that the adults were doing. It was something that we were very connected to.
Right. And then my family being a part of the new church, which then led to the establishment of the Maranatha Cafe.
Right.
So I see like, again, there's an infinite regress and
the Maranatha Cafe, that's where we decided to start our band, the Wax Paper Dogs, which was very instrumental in.
Right. But I've got some more moments.
Our friendship.
I've got more moments between then and there. But yeah, that was...
Keep going since you're going chronological. I'll make sure you don't miss any there on my list.
7th grade talent show.
Hell yeah, 7th grade talent show. That's where it was, we performed Scenario from Tribe Called Quest. So we had the posse cut, and it was me, you, Ben was on the drum machine.
Because what did we do 8th grade?
And then we added another song at the end that was just me, you, and Ben. So it went from Scenario right into another song. We got 2 for 1.
And what was the song we did 8th grade though?
Or did I have it backwards?
I thought Scenario was 8th grade.
That was 8th grade. We did Same Song, which is Digital Underground. One of the first songs that Tupac performs in.
Yeah.
And and that's the one we added a song onto. So that was me, you, Ben. And we brought the house down. We lived for that. I was like, oh my God.
And I remember being in 1st grade and watching the talent show of the 8th graders and thinking in 1st grade, oh God, can we be up there one day?
Yep.
And then in 7th grade we did. And again,
we showed up all the 8th graders, which was...
And that was...
Great.
And again, there's a bunch of moments that kind of meld, like, is this a career moment or is this a friendship moment? Which I think is very representative of our friendship, which is, our pursuit of things has been
we didn't have careers
source
then,
of
so
our friendship.
That makes it easier. That was very formative.
Yeah.
I mean, so you missed the fall.
That was fall of 8th grade year.
The fall festival
was
after that? Where we performed You Down with Halloween to the tune of You Down with OPP?
In my recollection, it was, because what we had done is we had gained confidence from getting up there for the 7th grade thing, and then we were like, well, we can get up there during the fall festival. It's not even a talent show. We can just say we've written a rap and do it.
Yeah, and again, to fast forward, this was one that was very high on my list as a friendship moment. The full circle moment of performing that rap on the Tonight Show with the Roots backing us. I've brought it up a couple of times. I think it's like it'll go down as one of like the most satisfying, special moments in our friendship. Because it was that full circle thing of the first, I remembered it as being before the 7th grade talent show, but it was an original song. Like, you wrote these lyrics. I dug them up. I still had the lyrics that you'd written. It was like, I knew it was special. I kept it.
I don't think I would have had the confidence
and that's why we
to do it without having done the talent
show. You can
show.
see it in the Book of Mythicality. But that's a good point. But yeah, to be able to perform it there, because I was also like, is the first time we went on the Tonight Show, that was a very special moment for us because we grew up watching the Tonight Show. It was iconic to us. So to be on it and to be doing what we were doing, to be doing a Willet from Good Mythical Morning, they built the set, They recreated our show within the Tonight Show. It's like, it was such a cosign, as they call it.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal.
And it was extremely special. That was like a highlight of definitely a highlight of our career. But to me, both of those, especially the rapping on there, is a highlight of our friendship, and is definitely in the top 5, subject to change.
There's a cluster of events
back then
in this time period,
right?
So I'm going to stay there for a little bit,
you can stay within like performing for an audience.
Well,
let me do that first.
Okay.
Every year there would be there was the school dance, the middle school dance. Benny Enzor, who was Matt's dad, who later became a member of our band, he was the DJ. And he put on a lip sync competition.
Yeah.
So it was another time for, okay, at a certain point in the dance, everybody's gonna gather around, and then if you've entered in, you're gonna get to you get to perform, and it's a contest. And we performed a DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince song called Jazzy's Groove, where the Fresh Prince, Will Smith, is just rapping about how good of a DJ Jeff is, and I was Jeff, and I was just acting like I was doing the DJ stuff, and he made the records talk and perform arithmetic.
1 + 1 is 2.
Which is extremely hard to do, and I had no clue what he was doing. And all these years later, here I am taking a course
now you're a DJ.
from him and learning how to do that. That was a big moment. We didn't win though, I don't think. I think Linwood
Campbell, I think maybe outdid us with a Black Sheep song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had a little more energy. It was a hit. The song we chose was not a hit. It was a deep cut.
Right. It was an iconic moment. A lot of people are trying to limit their bread intake, right? Bread can be high calorie, it can be high carb, but then there are just so many things that I enjoy as just part of my diet where
I
need
have
some
the bread.
You know what I mean? You got a hamburger, you got a hot dog, you got a taco, you got some tortillas, you got to have some bread.
A bread for a taco?
Tortillas.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's right. Well, Hero Bread reinvented the bread and buns that make everything Rhett just talked about great.
And now you can try their sweet, melt-in-your-mouth Hawaiian rolls for guilt-free summer sliders.
Let me tell you, even if summer's done, you're gonna wanna keep these Hawaiian buns around because they taste just as good as any other Hawaiian bun I've had.
Yeah. There's nothing compromised in taste or texture. We tried these yesterday, as a matter of fact. We had all of them in there. We had the tortillas, we had the seed bread, we had the buns, and I would have just thought I was eating regular bread.
I know, totally. Soft and fluffy. Make a sandwich.
But it has 0 grams of sugar and 0 to 1 grams of net carbs, and is very high in fiber.
I love fiber. I don't know if that makes me sound old, but I freaking love fiber.
We're fiber fans.
And I love bread. Keep the carbs out of your life without compromising flavor with Hero Bread. Get 10% off your order at hero.co and use code EAR at checkout.
That's EAR at HERO.co.
You know, there's so many really good streaming television shows that aren't in English, Rhett. And you can turn on the subtitles, or you can learn the language.
Oh, okay.
Like Lando is doing. Mm-hmm.
He is?
Yep, to watch his anime.
Well, if you would like that, in comes Rosetta Stone, the most trusted language learning program available on desktop or as an app that truly immerses you in the language you want to learn.
They've used trusted experts for 30 years with millions of users and 25 languages offered, some of which include Spanish, French, German, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, and Arabic.
Rosetta Stone immerses you in many ways. The lessons help you pick up a language naturally, first with words, then phrases, then sentences.
And it's designed for long-term retention. Plus, their built-in true accent feature gives you feedback on your pronunciation so you end up sounding like a pro.
A lifetime membership has all 25 languages for all language needs in your life. That's lifetime access to all 25 language courses Rosetta Stone offers for 50% off. That's a steal.
Don't put off learning that language. There's no better time than right now to get started. You can get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. Visit rosettastone.com/ear.
That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Redeem your 50% off at rosettastone.com/ear today. Non-performative moments. I think that Ben getting sick at that same time was actually a really significant thing.
7th grade.
So,
right.
And this is, Ben's initial diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. We've talked quite a bit about that, which kind of sidelined him in a lot of ways, right? He had to leave school. We still hung out, but the three of us spent a lot of time together. And I also spent a lot of individual time with Ben and with you.
Right.
And then Ben getting sick and suddenly being a middle schooler who didn't know how to process that, but also just literally could not go and do things. You and I were just beginning this like high school journey, doing these performances together. And I think it kind of had this, it was a catalyst for us sort of teaming up and being like, we're a unit in a way that we had been, but it wasn't so solidified until that moment.
Yeah. I'll add something around that time. Let's see, 8th grade school assignments that we turned into video projects.
Like Oedipus.
Which we dug up and showed on Good Mythical Morning, like in some of the first few seasons. Like super grainy VHS.
Bad,
but like in camera edited. I think we shot it and we shot it and put it on the tape in order. So it's like you didn't edit it later. But you might have done some editing.
I don't know if we had the ability to do the VCR editing yet.
Again, that making videos together was something that we did. Like the first time we were making videos for school, it was together. There were other people there, but and they were comedy. They were dumb.
And people were kind of letting us just do what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Be like, okay, they seem to really have an idea of what they want to do. It seems really bad and dumb, but they're so passionate about it that I guess I got to let them do it. Now, right around that same time, this is in the category of this would be in the movie. 8th grade, Betsy's house, the party, in the makeout room.
So you think this is an iconic?
I think it's so funny. Now,
yes.
for the rink shippers, this is evidence, piece of evidence number one that we're secretly lovers, right? They just love this stuff, right?
Okay.
And and as we have proven, we do not mind feeding into your theories. Us individually making out with our girlfriends in the makeout room, but then opening our eyes and making eye contact while making out with girls, right? Now, it wasn't lasting eye contact. If you want it to believe that it was lasting eye contact, then great. And maybe
it wasn't.
And maybe in the movie it would be.
It was more of a confirmation.
But it was like, yeah, we're doing
this. Of parallel experiences. All right, yeah. We're both on the right track.
It's an iconic thing that I want to put into something at some point. Because it's just so funny for two boys to be making out with their girlfriends. And like they've talked about it so much. Like they've talked about how they're gonna do this and like this is what life's all about. Like that.
Not the looking at each other part, but like
making out.
We're gonna make out with our girlfriends.
And maybe this was me like talking about how great it was going to be and convincing you how great it was gonna be. And then I'm see how great this is.
And I'm like, I feel like I might shit my pants at any moment because I'm so nervous. But okay, am I doing this right? It's probably why I was looking.
Yeah.
It's like. I wasn't laying down though.
We were both reclined.
Yeah, we were reclined.
There's quite a room, that makeout room at her house.
I mean, there was somebody else in there too. There was another couple.
Oh, at least a couple.
Might have been
at least a couple couples.
Does that happen anymore?
I hope so. By the way, I've got another one from that era before I move on to a really iconic moment, but I don't know if you've got anything else in that.
I think 7th, 8th, 9th grade, the sheer amount of time that we spent outdoors, especially over the summer, but like...
That's where I was going.
Just doing stuff outside. Like all the stories we've told before of like, we're going to chase cows, we're going to swim in the river, we're going across the river to chase the other cows, we're going to kayak down the river. A lot of these things started because of Ben. And then at that same time, he was less and less able to be there, and we kept going. You know, even when we were in school, after school, we would go hang out. Even after in the woods, even after we got our driver's license, we would still, like after sophomore year in high school, we were still going out into the woods and swimming in the river, and like it was super, like just the amount of time just talking and adventuring was, I think, the most pivotal, it may tie with the most pivotal time in our friendship in terms of like really solidifying it. There was this connection, but again, it was so much time. And we really began to, everyone else started to see us as a duo. And
yeah, high school was when that
we
happened.
saw ourselves that way, and we weren't self-conscious about it, even when people made fun of us. Like, we didn't care about those people. I don't recall caring that much about it.
Because there were the rink shippers. I forgot all about this, but our freshman year in high school.
Well, we talked about it on here like last year, but you forgot about it again?
There was the guy, Daniel, whatever his name was, who started the rumor that we were gay. And of course, that was at that point, that was like, oh gosh, this is the worst rumor anybody can make up about somebody in our little conservative town, you know?
It's not a lasting memory of it having like this like really negative impact on me.
No.
You know, like, we had a big group of friends, but like, we were always seen as a duo, and we unabashedly did almost everything together, you know? So that's when that really coalesced. And then I think it culminated, obviously, in a specific memory.
Well, I have a specific thing that I remember related to that, and that is summer between 8th and 9th grade, getting ready to go to high school, and us going to the river and just talking about what we were about to experience.
Right.
And it was one of those...
Who were we going to date? Like, you were very...
It was one of those, like...
fixated.
Very like it was like a TED Talk moment that I would go into where I was trying to like cast a vision for like, this is what high school is going to be. You realize.
Yeah, this like futurist thing that you still have to this
we've
day.
Had
like fantasy type.
We've been going to this school
visualization
with this limited number of girls.
Right.
And we're about to go to high school. We're going to have girls from Anger, girls from Lillington, girls from Lafayette.
Yeah.
And girls from Boogies Creek.
Yep.
And suddenly, you have no idea what is in store for you.
And I certainly didn't.
And I just remember sitting there just thinking about it. And just thinking about our lives are about to change. Man.
Yeah, these are the nature of the conversations we had. It was like very involved. It was deep, and it was fantastical, and there was a lot of it, you know? I think we're just kind of just dreaming and visualizing these things. And then, you know, I think we've moved the date around a bit to know exactly where it happened. But obviously, a top moment in our friendship is the blood oath.
Yeah.
I would argue, since we're going chronological, we're to it, but that it's number one.
Yeah.
I think it's number one.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was the first time that we had a again, it's like the way that you talked about like going into high school, this was going into the rest of our lives. This was a huge open-ended belief that we had, you know, when you admit that to the other guy, to the point where it's like, yeah, let's put this in writing. Let's make this a promise to do something big together. It's not something, it was a culmination of conversations we had, but it was a huge deal. And we didn't have to go there. We didn't have to ritualize this thing, you know? But doing that meant a whole lot, you know?
And I bet you we were probably actually 15 or 16. We used to say 14, but that doesn't make any sense because we were actually thinking about college at the time. I remember we were thinking about, like, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna major in film when we get to college?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think we were probably 16 at the time. Because it had gotten to this point where we were beginning to like consider things like at the time I thought I was going to play college basketball. And so we were like, I think maybe like, let's go to a place where I can play college basketball, but we can major in film.
Yeah.
Like trying to like create a scenario where we got to pursue this thing together, not knowing exactly where we were going from there. And I think that, obviously it comes up so much in conversation because it's sort of it's the thing that proves to someone that like, not only have we known each other forever, but we've been committed to doing something together in like a weirdly serious way.
Right.
In a way that when people say things like, oh, it's really unusual that you guys have been friends this long, and that you've done this much stuff together, and that your lives have been intertwined in this way, and that your careers have been intertwined, like that's where the sort of rarity begins to stack up. Because people are like, oh, I've got a friend, I've got somebody I went to middle school with that we still talk on a regular basis, but I don't have a room that I go to and stay in that room with them every single day. An office.
Right. Well, we weren't thinking that it was, we were starting a business partnership together.
No.
But that's only because I don't think we connected those dots. If we would have known enough about how the world worked, I think we would have known that that's part of what we were articulating. We're going to go into business together. It's just that our dreams weren't about being businessmen or even about making money.
And they still aren't.
No, they're not. It's a means to an end.
The business has always been a means to an end.
And it wasn't about making money. Like, we never talked about being rich.
Right.
We're going to make lots of money together. It's like we were going to
make lots of stuff together.
We're going to do something big together. I mean, it was very much aligned to what has happened. It's crazy.
Right.
And I kept it in my wallet, and I don't remember.
And then you lost it.
But
I didn't even keep it in my wallet, so I probably put it in my desk, and then it was probably cleaned out by my mom or something.
Do you recall anyone else knowing about the oath back then?
No.
I don't
think we talked about it.
I don't think anybody would have known about it.
Yeah, I don't think there was an occasion to talk about it.
And I don't think it's the type of thing that we would have told a girlfriend.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
My relationships were pretty shallow.
Oh, why am I still laughing?
It's funny.
I don't know.
Why?
It is funny. I was thinking of a lot of jokes to like play on being shallow, but I don't want to say any of them because they seem cruel.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Shortly after that, the first sort of application of that doing something big together was starting the band, Wax Paper Dogs, which we've talked about that a million times. We don't have to go into the details, but we started a Christian band.
Junior year is what I'm going to say right now.
Yeah, because I was 17 is when I picked up a guitar for the first time and started trying to teach myself so we could. Well, actually, we started the band before that. We were dual lead singers, but then I was like, "That's weird. We're not in sync," and so I decided to play guitar.
It was an endeavor.
Yeah.
We were bringing other people along. Like we had a friend group. We brought them along on things like camping trips and stuff like that. And when we started the band, it might not have exclusively been our idea, but it was like, okay, we're bringing you guys along. It's like we're obviously a duo. We do everything together. We're going to do this together. We had no clue how formative it would be from a personal, spiritual, and creative standpoint.
Because I think the thing that makes it really significant is not that the band was good. We weren't.
No.
Not that we were making incredible things. We weren't. I think the thing that is what it most represents is the level of seriousness that we apply to things. Like it is a, I don't think that the hallmark of what we have created, I'm very proud of many of the things that we created, but I don't think the thing that sets us apart is that whatever we do is more excellent. There's lots of people who make way more excellent stuff than we do. We make the stuff that we can make. We make stuff that only we can make, right? That's what makes it unique. But one of the things is that there is a pathological, potentially maniacal level of commitment to it that we both share that ends up sort of forcing our will on a situation sometimes. I'm not saying it's healthy, but the fact that we're both aligned in that way has led to a lot of things. That's one of the things that has led to things working for us.
I would put it this way, and I think in this way it is very healthy. We fostered an unapologetic commitment to dreaming. Like we had these big dreams that then we were extremely serious about following through with. And we believed.
We always thought that
we dreamed
whatever
we
were doing had so much more potential than it probably did.
Oh yeah.
When we started that band, we were already rock stars in our minds. It was like, well, we've done the most important thing, which is to start. Now it's just getting from point A to point B, and point B is playing arenas. And it was just a foregone conclusion that was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? It was stupid to think that way.
And everybody in the band believed it. That was the cool thing. We all just believed it.
Right.
And it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it's fun to believe that way.
And the amount, again, you add the component of time, like the amount of time we spent together.
We would practice
chasing.
We didn't just dream, we'd be like, we gotta practice, guys. We gotta get this shit down. We wouldn't say shit though, because we were Christians. But like, we gotta get this stuff down. This is serious. We can't be messing things up.
Right.
We gotta get these harmonies right.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It was such it all came together. The time, the commitment, the passion, the camaraderie, so much was encapsulated in the band, in how we worked.
And it was, because it was a spiritual thing, we had this sense of accountability with each other, but also with the band, that what we were doing was sacred, right? There was a sacred nature to what we were doing.
Yeah.
And it was important, and our reputations mattered, and that's what leads to another, hey, this is a movie moment after you got drunk at Trent's house.
Yeah, on my deconstruction, my first deconstruction episode, like spiritual episode, I told that story that just really demonstrates just the level of commitment we had to each other to have hard conversations, and we called it holding each other accountable. But I think in retrospect, there was this level of care that like we knew the real person, and we had made commitments to each other, or we had made commitments to God in the context of our friendship.
Right.
And at this point, yes, within the context of the band too, it's like, hey, we're going after this thing. You don't want to sabotage it with making a bad decision. Going and getting drunk at your friend's house when their parents are out of town for the first and only time. So, yeah, that iconic moment of, we had the conversation in the car, and then you pulled over and you kicked me out of the car, and then you invited me to reflect on what I had done by walking home.
Yes.
And then you drove off, and I'm taking this very seriously. Tears rolling down my face, walking down a 2-lane road in the middle of tobacco fields in Harnett County. And I look up, and, over the hill, I start to see you walking back. You know, you start coming over the horizon. You're not in the car. There is no car in sight. You're walking back, and you met me on the road, and then we turned around and we walked back together. Said nothing. And we got back in the car and we kept driving and we kept moving forward.
We didn't talk about it again.
Kept moving forward with our dreams. It's like you can't jeopardize this.
You've never had a drop of alcohol.
I've never had a drop of alcohol. I never got drunk again.
That's not true.
But
you didn't get drunk again until that time in your bathtub when you were drinking rum.
When I was married.
We don't like to get drunk.
Yeah, I don't like to get drunk.
Okay.
That was a big moment.
It was big.
That was a big moment.
I'm interested
What about the time when I told you that you had really screwed up? You shouldn't have done that with all your girlfriends. I mean, it was never as dramatic, but you had a lot more infractions than me.
You never told me anything about it. You never challenged me on it.
Oh, well, yes, we did.
I was a good boy once the band started.
Yeah, it wasn't easy for you.
Right, it wasn't that easy, but I did it.
It wasn't easy to not have shallow dating relationships. Okay.
So I don't remember, what I wrote down here is so many things in college. Because it's college is its own set of very concentrated formative memories as well. And I would say that our decision to join Campus Crusade and really go all in there was super formative. But I also think that we could have gone with another ministry, or we could have decided to do something else, but that ended up being really, really important for our friendship to continue to be centered around this mission. It was very mission driven. Our lives were mission driven, and we saw each other as very important in that. But it also led to all of the professional stuff.
We entered into that scene as a duo. You know, everybody who met us in college, the vast majority, met us as a duo. You know, for our freshman year, we were still talking about the band we were in, and we would have a couple of concerts, and when we would make friends, we invited them to the concerts that we would have, because it was still within an hour's drive to kind of go back home or somewhere in between and have a venue that we could now invite our college friends to. So
and we both bleached our hair.
And we both looked really weird and different than most everybody else we were hanging out with. We were more extreme looking.
Yeah, it may have been a common thing elsewhere, but in North Carolina, right. It was more unusual.
It was walking around campus, it was okay, even if these guys aren't together, I can tell that these guys need to be friends if they're not. If you just saw us on campus. But yeah, everybody met us in that context. And I don't recall being self-conscious about that at all at that point. For me, going off to college together, moving into that dorm room, and that I just remember the feeling of the first week, and that we had each other at a point where we were completely on our own. And I remember being scared shitless in a lot of ways after that first week. It's wow, this is a different level of freedom. I feel like the net's gone, kind of a thing. But we had each other, and we had an identity to everyone else of having each other. And people liked it. I think it didn't push people away. I think it drew people in. You know, the way that we conducted our friendship was inclusive. It was that hey, we're doing stuff, be a part of it, kind of a kind of a thing. You know, which is when we met Greg, and he became our closest other friend. It was the friends that we made were really good friends. We're going on this college buddies trip again this year. Greg, Tim, and Harm. And it's this identity of friendship that wasn't exclusive is something that, yeah, we were proud of it, you know? And because you might be like, well, maybe we should do some stuff apart, you know? It's like, is this a little weird? Like, we never talked about that.
And that doesn't really,
you know?
I think there's a time and a place for considering that once you start sort of establishing your lives and your families and stuff like that. And that kind of thing happens naturally. But when you're in high school and college, I think that the lack of self-consciousness about that is, it's like, in many ways, it's sort of like twins, right?
Yeah.
You know, twins, well, and sometimes this happens earlier with twins because they've been together their whole lives, but there's the twins who are like, we're going to the same college. We're going to continue being this unit. Mm-hmm. And they have to self-actualize and individuate at some point. But there was no consideration of that. Now, we were doing slightly different things. It wasn't like every time, you know, we made a decision, because I was like, I'm going to lead this Bible study, or I'm going to go on this summer project, and I'm going to...
We'll spend the summer apart.
MC the meeting or whatever. It wasn't like we had to do every single thing together.
Yeah, there was a level of security, I think, that that we didn't have to do everything together, but it was still the vast majority.
Right.
I think that the first time the two of us performed a song together that was just us, where by this point you moved to emceeing like a regional conference, which the Christmas conference, 1,300 students. There was this was a big career moment, but it's also a big friendship moment where it's like, okay, there was a little bit of divergence that you were emceeing meetings and on stage, and it wasn't a duo thing, you know? So publicly, you started to develop this reputation.
Right.
And become known, not just at NC State, but at other campuses when you did this. And then, you know, I was there as maybe like a behind-the-scenes producer or director, so to speak, but like to be on stage and to sing a song that was, and we had done a song, and like it was me and Tim singing with you, but then that was a big moment for me in terms of like our career definitely, but I think our friendship when we were both performing up there. And then that was the start of us being seen as a semi-professional duo.
And right along that same time, because my first Christmas conference emceeing gig was as a senior, and then the second one was basically after I graduated in December. You ended up getting married in June, that following June, and then Greg ended up getting married 6 months later.
Right.
And we performed at his rehearsal dinner, and we took that same song that me and you and Tim had performed, that Unibrow song, and we turned it into, you know, the We've Seen Greg Naked, Hope Soon You Will Too, Hope You Enjoy It More Than We Do song. And it went so well, and that was when Jesse and Christy, on the way home, they were like, y'all need to do something with this. Like, you need to, this doesn't need just to be a party trick.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do with this?
You know, in this conversation, I find it interesting that we never referred back to that blood oath. When we're making all these decisions and we're starting to become known as a duo, as friends, but then also publicly, once we started taking their advice and started writing songs, making more videos together, we didn't hearken to the oath. It was kind of like, well, that was I don't know. We never told anybody about it. And then we never talked about it. It wasn't like once we made the oath, we were constantly like, it was different than when I said we gave ourselves permission to just dream and like to passionately follow it. I think we were following that commitment from the oath, but we never thought about it that way. At least I didn't. And I think I would be much more likely to do that than you. But neither one of us did. So I do find that interesting that I think the oath for us was there was a film school component to it. So when that didn't pan out and we went into engineering at NC State and we were still roommates, there was still this like, okay, it's a little too vulnerable to say at any point, I really want to make something happen with the two of us. It just kind of, it felt like we were on this track of we're studying engineering.
What were the opportunities? We're going to open an engineering firm together?
Exactly.
There were two different disciplines. And then I was convinced, even while I was in school, that I wasn't going to be an engineer, right? So I proposed the idea to my parents about changing my major because we come from a different generation. Our kids would just come to us and say, I'm changing my major.
Yeah.
We had to go to our parents and like ask permission to change our major. Whether that's better or worse, it's just a different generation. And I was like, I want to change the communications because I think I'm just going to go into ministry. Because I had done two summer projects. And I was like, I think I'm going to go on stint, which is like short-term international. It's where you go to another country for like a year or longer. And you evangelize in another country. And so I was kind of thinking I might do that. And I was already kind of thinking I was going to marry Jessie. And so I was like, well, she's not even graduated from college yet. So my mind was in this place where I was like, I don't know, I'm going to do something like that because we didn't.
And I was thinking I'm going to do something responsible because I'm getting this degree and my family would kill me if I didn't use my degree. What I was thinking.
But Campus Crusade, Christmas conference, we had no intentions on stopping doing that. And I think in my mind, I wouldn't have articulated it this way, but if you had asked me, what is the big thing that you guys did together at that point, I'd be like, Christmas conference.
Yeah.
And then maybe one day we'll get to MC Big Break, the national, which we ended up doing, the national conference in Panama City. And so I think that I was thinking about it in that context because entertainment, for entertainment's sake, wasn't something we were interested in or even knew what a path would be.
Right.
So I think to me, it was like, oh, we found our calling. It's ministry, and we're going to use our comedic gifts or whatever in that context, and that's the thing we're doing together. But I didn't have any specific like path in mind.
And there was this dynamic of you were generating more opportunities because you were in front of audiences as basically a comedian. And I felt like it was more up to you to include me or not, and I wasn't going to like push or beg for it. So the fact that happened and that there was a point where it was like through my lens, it was like you kind of bringing me along. I don't know if you thought about it that way, but like there might have been a little self-consciousness that it wasn't like people weren't demanding a duo. They were saying, hey, here's an opportunity for you to keep emceeing stuff. And so to me, when we created a comedy show that was very much equal, like that was the next thing where we were trying something again. Now we're in this point where it's like, how much are these career pivotal moments and how much are they friendship moments? Well, they're completely both because it was this acknowledgement that like, we can do this and we're going for this together. We're taking this big risk. We're dreaming about it and we're following through with it. And
yeah, it was when Cole, my
brother's giving us an opportunity to do something. So let's make a comedy show that works in the context of a crew meeting.
He was like, can you create like an hour-long show that's evangelistic in nature, but comedy based? And that was when we created that show.
And we were working as engineers, and it gave us a reason to get together. Like, would we get together and just hang out? Yes, but like we lived probably 40 minutes apart once we were both married. And so it's hard to get together, you know, you're newlyweds, you're trying to build a life, you're in different communities. All of a sudden we had very little overlap, yet we were volunteering, doing this thing that brought us together on a weekly basis. We were still doing the things. We were writing songs, we were coming up with bits, we were making plans, and we were obsessing about it.
And this will come into play a little bit later.
And it was fun.
This will come into play a little bit later with, another pivotal moment. But I think one of the reasons that I've always saw these things as hand in hand is like our career and our friendship, which we talked about previously, can be there's an interpretation of that, which is just like, oh, well, if we weren't working together, we wouldn't be friends, which we can talk about how we kind of addressed that and talked about that years later. But to me, how do you cultivate a friendship, right? You spend time together doing the things that you're passionate about. So some people might be like, yeah, that's my golfing buddy. I play golf with this guy. Or this is the guy that we love getting together and doing this activity. Like we love archery. And we get together and we're in the archery club and, we talk about life and that.
Right.
Our hobby is our career. Now, we have other hobbies, but when I think about the one thing that I would rather do more than any other thing, it's create. That's my hobby. If I was an engineer, I would have a creative hobby on the side. I would be like, yeah, I do these creative endeavors. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about so-and-so, but my full-time job is engineer. I have no doubt that that's what we would be doing. And so that was always a point of connection to me, and I never saw it as a cheapening. I saw it as this is my hobby, and it's also his hobby. And now it's become slowly over the course of that, like making that decision to do that comedy show, then Shane saying, can you guys turn this into an actual ministry position, us turning it into, again, we've talked about all of this. I hate to keep saying that, but we've talked about this in detail, so I'm moving quickly, but we became full-time missionaries with Campus Crusade for Christ, using our comedy to train students in evangelism. And that's when I think that was a really significant period of time for our friendship, because we ended up traveling around the United States together. Sometimes just me and you. Sometimes we'd bring the wives and the kids.
Yeah.
More often we didn't because it was too expensive. So we would just we would fly somewhere and rent a car, or we would drive there. And so we were on the road together, sleeping in the same hotel room because, again, we had no money. And so it was like the idea of getting 2 hotel rooms. Like, what? Who do you think we are? And so we spent so much time together. We would be in the car together. We would be working together. We would travel around, and then we would go back to the hotel room, and we would share a bathroom together, right? Like it was... Those are really pivotal. We do not do that now. We get our own hotel.
Yeah, room. we don't need that.
40 years of friendship, the one thing you do need is you need separate bathrooms.
Right.
But at the time, it was this pivotal thing of just like it was doing life together.
And I keep going back to like the dreams never got smaller. They kept getting bigger, and we went after it. And so it was extremely risky and exciting and hard. And it required a lot, but it was rewarding and it was fun. And it was, the amount of time spent adventuring, the version of going out and chasing cows, when you add a specific dream and objectives to that you're completely aligned on, it just cures the friendship. It just solidifies it in stone. I think, it forever.
And it wasn't like us doing that and spending that time together was causing us to be like, I don't think we should, I don't want to do this anymore. It was very much like we got to keep doing this, and
right.
we got to get better at this. we got to see where this thing can take us. And again, it wasn't at the time. It wasn't to become professional entertainers. It was still within the context of this ministry, but we had an idea that this ministry could be huge.
You know, the thing that makes me so excited right now is if you just clip out what you just said, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, he's talking about Wonderhole. He's talking about what we're doing right now. You know, I think that's the thing that makes me so happy.
Well, that's the last thing we're going to talk about.
But
don't get ahead of yourself.
Okay, but it's chronological. It's completely mirrored in it. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we'll get back to it. Let me look at my list here. Damn. First comedy show, did that.
There's so many like little points. Unless you've got a specific one.
No, go ahead. Mine are kind of later.
The place that my mind goes is the road trip out here to California.
Well, I think before we moved out, the Online Nation trips were still like that. It was the same thing that we were talking about, like you and I traveling out here to LA for the first time, shooting a television show that we started to realize it sucked.
Yeah.
And like that whole experience.
And we left staff because we had to in order to do it. And again,
oh yeah.
At the time, the rationalization was, oh, we're going to have so much more opportunity for ministry by actually going into the belly of the beast. And again, we'll get into why what happened. But we'll talk about the road. I think I can contextualize what actually happened in the road trip.
I definitely put that on my list. What we called, because we filmed it. We filmed it ourselves. There's nobody else there. The Mythical road trip series, which was basically us moving out to LA, like driving a U-Haul with all of our crap in it. One U-Haul, half full of your stuff, half full of my stuff, pulling my minivan behind, driving all the way across the country and announcing where we were at, what rest stops we were going to pull over at so fans could line up and meet us. And that was, that was a big milestone in our friendship. I mean, it's iconic. Moving across the country, and we left our families behind because we're doing them a favor, and
putting them on a plane.
Yeah, put them on a plane once we got all our shit out here, and then we had this special trip, that we were taking.
And that was content.
I think we were probably still staying in the same hotel room, by the way.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Why not?
I don't know if you remember it this way. And again, we've done whole podcasts about the deconstruction and like how we got from being a Christian to not being a Christian. No matter how many times we talk about it, the story for a lot of people will be, well, it's because you it's because you moved to California. That's what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was happening very early when we were in North Carolina. And in this road trip, I remember, it wasn't the first time, but some of the most memorable conversations of me telling you that I thought that it was all bullshit happened on that road trip.
Really?
Because I have this picture of us being in this U-Haul. You driving sometimes, me driving sometimes, and me basically just being like, I just don't, like, here's all the things that I can't believe anymore, and here's the little sliver that I'm holding on to, and that is just the concept of the idea of Jesus and the gospel. That was what I had.
Yeah.
Right? But I had let go of a lot of fundamental beliefs about the Bible being true, and I hadn't quite dove so deeply into the historicity of Jesus and that stuff, but I was kind of like in the but telling you a bunch of things during that trip,
it totally times out.
That I was like, I just I don't know what I still felt like I still had this sort of evangelistic mindset that like we were still like going out to California and like Jesus was going to use us for something, but because I was so much less certain about my beliefs before we ever got to California. I remember that road trip being significant in that sense too. I think I talked to you more directly about that stuff
definitely
then than any other time.
Yeah, because I was, the opportunity to move out allowed me to skirt having to leave my church, which I was on the verge of doing.
Yeah.
So I was very much there on my own journey. As far as that particular road trip and those particular conversations, reflecting like our friendship and it being such an important part, I think it's that this was it was a secret and sacred exchange. We were filming, we had a GoPro. We would film, anytime we would think we wanted to film something, we would turn on the camera in the U-Haul as we were driving across the country. Because we had in our minds, we had mapped out a bunch of videos we wanted to make, but then one of them was just, we're gonna capture what we were, just the experience and some of the conversations. You can see in one of the videos, we were talking about our hopes and dreams related to our career, and it was like very real. But you know what we never did? We never rolled on the camera when we were having these like deep soul-searching conversations. And I'm so glad we didn't at the time.
It would take 10 years before we opened the doors to those conversations.
But the amount of time that we spent having those conversations, it wasn't, the reason why I don't remember it is because there were so many. Again, if you add up the time spent talking about the depths of our soul and what was changing and how scary that was. I think that's the undertone of like the spiritual evolutions that we were each on was very scary and disconcerting, and it just throws your life off balance. And the fact that we had a completely safe and open place to discuss it all the time. Like, I remember once we got here and I remember we would get lunch in, around Studio City. And I remember all the times walking up and down the street because back then we could go to places to eat lunch. Now we're too busy to go places to eat lunch. That would be our time that we couldn't help it. We would just talk about it. Hours and hours adding up of just processing. It's like, and what does this mean? What does this mean for like our salvation, for our future, for our families, for our marriages, for our friendship? It was like, it could have been a threat to that, because certainly we weren't exactly always on the same page, So it's like, oh shit.
I think that's
happening here?
that's a really interesting observation.
It was huge to have that.
There's a really interesting aspect to that. Was unequivocally the most important thing in our lives, and it was being dismantled. Right? Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that there's a lot of times, because that's so foundational, when that foundation goes away, a lot of things that were built on that, whether that be a friendship, a marriage, a career, those things crumble as well. But to me, and I've actually only ever talked about this explicitly in the context of my marriage, because it's a little bit more it's a more relatable story, that people who are married and are both Christians and and got married under those pretenses and on that foundation, one of them or both of them change their worldview and then they get divorced. Super common story. That didn't happen with me and Jesse. It didn't happen with you and Christy. And that was, and we've always said that, like, wow, we kind of learned that our love for each other was actually not rooted in that worldview. That worldview was just a way of seeing the world. It wasn't the way to see the world. It was a way to see the world. Now we see the world in a different way. We could be wrong. I don't think you can be particularly sure about that. But our love kind of survived that because it wasn't based in that. And as we talk about this, I'm realizing our friendship wasn't based in that. It was enhanced by that. It was having that common mission was really, strategic for a lot of ways.
It wouldn't have existed without it at a certain point, as we've already established.
But it never crossed our minds that, we're not Christians anymore, so we're not going to be friends. And at the same time, it never crossed our minds, we're not Christians anymore, so we're going to stop believing these ridiculously unrealistic dreams that thinking things are going to come true.
I think it crossed my mind because you were ahead of me, and I was like, okay, he's not going to be a Christian. I'm going to be a Christian, and I think we can keep this together because I just don't think I care as much as he does. So I think I can just. And then you know what? When he comes, if we stay in that realm of not being completely aligned on what we believe, we're still aligned on so many other things, and he'll come back around. There was a window of time when it was just like, okay, he's going off.
It's just a phase.
It's going off. It's been plenty of phases before. He'll come back around.
My parents want to believe.
And that's what I would tell myself. And it might have been just for a period of like 1, 2, 3 months. I can't remember. But I do remember having that thought.
Yeah.
And saying, I'm just going to listen and be a sounding board. And, I knew that I wanted to keep the conversation open and ride it out. I wasn't, I was never one to argue. So there was a strategy at a certain point that was like, okay, I feel like there could be a threat to our bond here. I'm just going to ride it out. And then I might be saving his life eternally at some point. That's not how it went.
And that never really crossed my mind.
That's because I'm such a great friend.
I mean, it crossed my mind about my marriage. Sure. And the only reason it crossed my mind is because I had been told.
Right.
By everyone that I knew.
Me too.
That the only way you can stay together is if you're both rooted in Jesus. And so then all of a sudden you're not, and you're like, okay, is this when it just ends?
I think it was such, but just to get back to, it was so formative to our friendship to have something that was just for us. Like that was deeply personal. It was also for me and Christy. It was also for you and Jesse. And then the 4 of us were also talking about it. Mm-hmm. But the way that we talked about it, I think was so, going through that experience together of spiritual deconstruction was extremely formative because there was no chance of there being a public component or a business component. It was a personal, spiritual friendship thing for us. It was clean in that way. And very deep in that way. So it was nice for it not to have the career and business parts of it directly wound up in it. So it's definitely, it's probably top 3. It's not an actual moment, but it's like, it's a big phase. So where are you at next?
Well, so there's a bit of a blur once we get to California and everything starts growing over the past 14 years, right?
Yeah.
And we basically have just continued on this track of relentlessly pursuing this dream together, hand in hand, still sharing an office, and just these things keep happening, and we're kind of just there for them. And it's the career and the friendship. But I think that for me brings to mind. I don't know what I can't remember exactly what year it was when you wrote that letter to me that we've talked. We talked about. I don't know how much we've talked about it. We talked about it on Howie's podcast more though than we talked about it on our podcast. But it seems like it was. I don't know, what year was that?
I don't know, man.
Like
there was the letter that I wrote because it was about if our friendship is just about what we're doing publicly, if it's just about the work, I don't want to keep doing it. It was basically like, the balance got out of whack for me. Like the work got away from us, and I felt like our connection was thinning.
I would say around 2016, 2017. So 2017 is sort of the pinnacle of this happening, of us overcommitting, right? Because that's GMM 22, where we did like 5 videos a day, buddy system, too many things.
Christy's head injury was happening at the same time.
Yeah. And so those things combining created a sense where it may have been true, what I said earlier may have been true, that I'm still doing my hobby with my best friend and I'm seeing you as much as I've ever seen you, spending as much time with you as I've ever spent with you.
Right.
But we're both really stressed out. It's work. We're just working together and not necessarily being friends together. And that was your interpretation of it, and I don't think it was a wrong interpretation. My response to you at the time was what I just said a second ago, which is, oh, well, I've never really seen it this way because I feel like I'm doing the thing that I love with my best friend. And so us going after this dream that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger feels right to me. And you were kind of like, what about the stuff that's not work related, right? Because that's sort of the pitfall of it becoming your hobby becoming your job, and your friendship being, monetized in a lot of ways. And also doing too many things. That led to me going to therapy. That's when I started going to therapy, when I had my physical manifestation of stress.
But there's then there was a time period after that, and then there was, then the email came back up at a second date.
Like not too long ago, like maybe last year.
Okay, so it was coming out of the...
Maybe 2 years ago?
Coming out of the pandemic?
I don't know. I just remember I was with Jesse. I don't know how it came up. And I was like, I think this is me going to therapy for, having gone to therapy for a few years and getting more in touch with my own emotions, but also just sort of like making a concerted effort to like increase my emotional intelligence. Where I was like, hey, Link wrote that letter to me, that email. Let me see if I can dig it up.
Right.
And I like dug it up and read it, and then I read my response and I was like, oh wow, this is not how I would respond now to this. Because the way I responded was like, yeah, I don't see it that way. Like, I actually think that we spend all kinds of time together and our friendship is as good as it's ever been. I don't see a dichotomy between, well, let's just go do stuff that isn't work related. Like, let's go paddleboarding and then let's make videos together. Like, they all seem the same thing. But I was like, that was a really insensitive response to that because I didn't actually validate your actual concern and be like, I understand what you mean by that. And like, if that's how you see it, then
we didn't.
This is what we can do to meet eye to eye on that. Right?
We didn't see eye to eye at the time, And I don't recall how much of it, I don't recall concluding completely from your response, like, okay, I give up, this is it. We're done or something, because that didn't happen. It was somewhere in the middle. It was like, it wasn't the response that I was needing, which you recognized when you revisited it. I don't think, I can't really recall exactly where I landed on it, but it was kind of somewhere in the middle. At least I got it out there, and there was like an effort to like put some work into our friendship separate from our work. But it was kind of this, it didn't fix it, because like you said, when you revisited it, it was like, oh shit, I missed him.
Right.
When you revisited it, it was in the context of, the pandemic, James and the Shame being an independent project that like we had some barriers built between us that made it hard to discuss that openly. And I was hurt by a process that you weren't doing anything wrong, but the way that we didn't talk about it and see each other about it wasn't good for our relationship. So I think within that context, as best I can remember, it was, or at least around the same time, you revisited that email and pulled it up. And I think that, like, you kind of, you apologizing about that, and you kind of owning and like some regrets associated with how you responded was a pivotal part of kind of breaking down those walls in our communication, so that we could see each other again, and so I think it was it was very difficult, because it was kind of there was a part A and a part B to it, and it definitely a year in between, right?
Oh yeah,
right. So
at least,
but it kind of bringing that part A back into the part B, where we were having these like post-pandemic issues, kind of like brought it all out. And yeah, it was like a new level of talking about the friendship and talking about what we wanted and being able to express our needs. And I know that was a big takeaway for me, is to say, well, if my needs aren't being met in this friendship, that's something that I can bring up, instead of just, if I harbor resentment, that's gonna build a wall. We're not the same people. We may not have the exact same needs. That doesn't mean that we don't love each other and that we don't need each other. But we've always, when people ask us, like, what's the key to having such a long-lasting friendship? We say it in a lot of different ways, but it boils down to communication.
Right.
I mean, so much of it, and like hard work to make a relationship work. Everything that we've learned in our marriages to make those work, those principles apply in their own way in our friendship. And we talk about that, but you never know what circumstances come together to make that extremely difficult to do. And I think that's what we discovered. But then we discovered that we did have it in us to say, to like be completely exposed and put ourselves out there and get through it. And so it's funny to me how it's fuzzy, because it was so pivotal in terms of who we are and as a friendship duo. I think it's certainly a again, I mean, definitely a top 5, maybe a top 3, going through that.
I think so.
It was like, I would say it was the number one test of our friendship. Like, realizing our promise to one another, ironically, became the biggest threat to our friendship,
Hmm.
And it could have gone a sad way. Like, it never got to the edge. Like, I have no story, I guess when I was writing that email, I remember I wrote it on a plane. And I was like that felt very on the edge of like, this is kind of like a breakup letter. It could be. It could be the beginning of the end of our friendship as we know it. But because, I don't know, there was a lot of beautiful moments in there. And I think because we worked through it and we you showed up in a way that at one point you weren't capable of, and then you became capable of it and you showed up. And that meant the world. And I think in my own way, I'm sure I was doing the same thing. I wasn't, I was a different person from writing the email from when we revisited it too.
And I think that a big part of it, this is why communication is important, is like when you think about like the weight that you attach to that email, there's a negative interpretation of the weight that I didn't attach to it, which is like, oh, I didn't see you and I didn't hear you. The positive side of that is, like, it crossed my mind that there was ever a breakup that was even a possibility. I would have been like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous, right? And I think that leads into, and we've talked about this extensively, but like the James and the Shame stuff too. Like,
right.
For me, it was never, I'm doing this thing that's going to be my thing, and Link's not part of it, and this might become something big. Like, it was always very much just like, our friendship is solid, our working relationship is solid, our career path is not changing, our career goals are not changing. I've got this thing that I feel like I have to do, and so it isn't perceived as a threat to me, but that doesn't mean that you perceiving a threat is insignificant. But because it wasn't because I didn't see it like I was doing something threatening, I didn't appreciate the way that you saw it, and because we didn't talk about it. So I think the biggest lesson that I learned in all of that is like, just communicate these things and think about how your actions can be interpreted and actually get on the same page about things, right? So that's kind of where, for me, the biggest lesson in all of that was like, first of all, I'm just a different person than I was when you wrote that email. I wouldn't respond in the same way.
To your credit, you did physically show up. Like, I landed, I got home, sent the email. The next day, you were physically in my backyard, and we were sitting there talking about it.
Yeah, it wasn't that I didn't dismiss it.
You didn't you weren't an asshole about it. You just you didn't see it all.
But I basically just told you, I was essentially like, I don't know why.
You talked me down.
I don't know why you see it this way.
Right, you talked me down. Right.
It's not true.
But you were there. You literally showed up. So it wasn't like you were an asshole. You were the best you could be at the time.
Right. But I do think that this all leads up to, eventually we have to end this podcast. But
well, let me say one thing else about this. The thing I feel about, I find it interesting that it's fuzzy because it was so formative to our friendship now. But I also find that, like, as I talk about it, I'm not, like, the emotions that I feel, like, I feel like I could cry about this, but the way that I would cry about it is that I think is a beautiful thing. I think it would be tears of joy. Like, I'm not, it's not welling up any undealt with wounds. Like, and yeah, thank God for therapy for both of us, right? Because I know for me there was a lot of like, there were tears and talking through it, and like me having my own process, which was just for me, and then allowing us to have our process. But now it's not like, I feel good about talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's fuzzy, because it's in the past, and it's like, the application, the lessons learned, I think are baked in, whether I remember the details or not. So it's not like, oh shit, are we gonna repeat the past? No, I don't think so. I think that I feel really good about talking about it,
Yeah.
And that says a lot. So,
well, and I think a big difference with where we're at right now, and this kind of leads into like the most recent, but also the next and final piece, as far as I'm concerned, is our decision to do what we're doing with Wonderhole, right?
Yeah.
Which is we talked about the reasons for why we're doing it the way we're doing it. In it, a disillusionment with trying to do things through a traditional path, and just making the decision to just make the thing that you want to make. But I think that the significance of this, as it ties into our friendship, is that the foundation, you could say in many ways, the foundation of everything that we do from a content perspective is our friendship, right? That's sort of the bread and butter of Good Mythical Morning. It's just us being together, hanging out. But Wonderhole is significant in that it's the place where the friendship is the foundation, but also our passion for the things that we want to create together meet.
Yeah.
Good Mythical Morning is our friendship on display, but we're stepping into a framework that has been maybe established by us a long time ago, but it's something.
It's not a synergistic expression of an artistic adventure.
Yeah, and we have no plans to stop doing it, and we love doing it. But the thing that we want from a creative passion standpoint, we want to make the stuff where we're trying things and we're experimenting, and there's been this getting on the same page creatively and like trying things and not knowing whether or not something's going to work, but knowing exactly what we're trying to make work.
Mm-hmm.
But also from a subject matter standpoint, being able to really explore our friendship and turn the lessons that we've learned as friends into the message that we're communicating through this project.
Yeah.
It's been pretty freaking significant from a friendship standpoint.
I'm really excited that we've processed enough and now have gotten to a point of appreciating what we've got, to a point where we can turn around and package it as a gift to other people. And I think it's something that we've done. I mean, Looking for Miss Locklear, it's on the list for that reason. GMM is what it is. It's interesting that we didn't talk about starting it, but like that is a pivotal moment. Like that, I would say the first episode, like a pivotal friendship moment, of course. And all the planning and the hatching of that. Can't go without saying, but yeah, I think that just packaging it as a gift for people and making people feel good. It's
and it's just been nice. It's just been fun because it's just of all the things that we do, the creative process, like really being in a room and being like, what if this happens? What if we try to do this and then this? Like that's what we're passionate about. That's our hobby. And everything else that we do, I mean, obviously we get to sit here and make a podcast where we talk to each other and catch up, and it's a product that our company makes. It's freaking, how does that happen? How do you get the privilege of doing that? I'm not going to lose sight of that. But again, it's talking to each other. There's not a same level of creative element to it. So there's just this strange and wonderful coalescence of a lot of things that are significant. And then the net effect is we end up spending a lot of time together, traveling together to make this stuff. Like we end up spending time together, and then while we're together, we are discussing the thing that we're doing, which is making this piece of content that is a tribute to our friendship. Like that kind of is that's sort of what we keep coming back to.
Yeah. I had a couple of smaller ones, but nothing that it would make sense to go back to now. There's so many little things. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. I think that's it's nice to know that like the core of what has made our friendship work is where we're operating from now. That's what Wonderhole is, and I think, a lot of ways.
First of all,
and it's going to take work we are applying a lot of work personally for it to stay there, and because it's hard. It's hard for it to stay something that is. It's a lot of things, besides just just that like joyful creative partnership. And so we're trying our best to preserve that as the core of this. And it's, back when we were kids spending the night and just having dumb conversations or deciding to see if we can get the cows to cross the stream for no reason, just because that's what we want to be our objective today. Like that level of playful, open-ended adventure, I think, is where we still are, and that's what's so wonderful about it.
And just it in itself, just making the thing and putting it out there is part of the adventure. As we record this, we are just a couple of days after the release of the first episode, which has been well received. And I think that overwhelmingly positive reception and people kind of understanding what it is that we're trying to do and kind of getting it in the way that we were hoping that some people will get it. We know not everybody's going to get it. But I think that there are questions like, why? Oh, I thought this was going to be a scripted show. Like I thought you guys.
Hold on now, you're getting into work. We can't be talking about work.
No, but what I want to
talking about a friendship.
No, but my answer to is the reason the show is what it is, and not that we'll never do something that's like, this is a scripted, serialized show. One of the reasons, is because that when you kind of take our friendship and our creative partnership and you break it open and you look at its parts, you're like, oh, well, these guys just being friends together and experiencing something together is such and who's going to say what is such an important part of our friendship and even our creative process.
Yeah.
So that's an element of it. But then what if this thing happens? What if there's a song? What if we do this little stupid sketch? What if the world changes in this way?
Right.
That's also an aspect of our passion. And so my answer is, it's twofold. The reason that the show is what it is because, A, the platform that we're making it for, and so there are certain sort of restrictions that lead you into the direction that we ended up going. But just as important is that it's much more representative of our friendship than, say, Buddy System in that way. Because that, two guys in the bathroom, butt to butt, trying to change clothes is a encapsulation of our friendship that we didn't want to leave out, I guess, is ultimately what I'm saying. It's like the show is what it is in some ways because of that's who we are.
So if we do 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 45, 50 years of friendship, we'll have that much more stuff to put on the list. That's how I feel about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't wait.
We're just getting started.
Happy 40th friendiversary.
Oh, speaking of happy anniversary and shaking hands.
You're going to promote that now, huh? Oh,
Look at this iconic moment.
We merchandised it.
Look at the iconic moment, Link. We didn't talk about us shaking hands at the senior prom.
Yep.
Which has become a logo now.
Yeah, that's a cool sweatshirt there.
Celebrate your friendship with Mythical. Yeah, happy anniversary, man. What are we gonna do on the actual day?
Well, that's just for me and you to talk about.
Get a steak dinner?
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll talk at you next week, and leave us a voicemail, 1-888-EARPOD1, and a nice review will never be bad. See ya.
Just got to let you two know, and you probably hear this all the time, that I made a best friend because of Mythical and Good Mythical Morning and all that. But she said yes to being a bridesmaid in my wedding, even though we live across the country from each other, all because I sent her a little Dinkin' and Sink It shot glass and said, will you be my bridesmaid? So thank you for allowing me to do that. Love the merchandise. Talk at you next week.